What's going on, everybody? I got DJ Van Wick on the show tonight from Reptiles for Centuries. It is 3 a.m. in South Africa. DJ gets up, agrees to be on the show. Stick around. We got a cool show for you tonight. We're going to talk international reptile trade and what's going on with ball pythons in South Africa. Good evening, everybody. I'm really glad to have you all here tonight. Sorry, I'm sorting out this audio real quick here. We made it. It's the night that we've all been waiting for months. Months we've toiled. Arguments, debates, questions, wondering. It's the night that the college football playoff selection committee announces their first annual rankings of the year. We've made it. We're here. Thanks for being here, guys. This is your safe spot from all the election headache. All joking aside, I do hope that you got out and voted today. It's one of the most cherished rights, or what would we say? Rights that we enjoy as Americans. So I hope you got to exercise that. If you chose not to vote, that's your prerogative as well and your decision as well. And I can respect that if you put thought into it. So thanks for being here. That's all I'll say on the topic. I don't think anybody comes here for my political thoughts or speeches. I certainly wouldn't come here for that. So thank you all. DJ Van Wyk on the show tonight from Reptiles for Centuries. If you don't know DJ, obviously I'm going to tell you about him, and you'll get to meet him here in a little bit. But he's a breeder out of South Africa. He's been at it for quite some time. I think a little bit over a decade. But he does a whole lot of international business, and I met him at Tinley, and I was like, I got to hang out with DJ a little bit. So anyhow, very, very interesting, insightful guy. I'm glad to have him on tonight. It is 3 a.m. in South Africa, and he's just waiting in the green room while I'm running my yapper here. So we'll get DJ on before too long. Couple announcements, and we will keep going. Later this month, coming up, I got Antoine from DPR Cold Blood. I got Emily and Ed from Snake Discovery are also on the show in the next couple weeks. And then I got stuff cooking with Steven, Shane, Chris Eaton. I got a cool lineup to finish up the year. And then, of course, Tuesday this year is Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. I'm not sure what I'm going to do, if I'm going to reschedule the shows, if I'm just going to take a little vacation. I don't know. Maybe I'll do morning versions for 2 weeks. I don't know. That sounds complicated too. I'll figure it out. I got time. That's coming up. But anyway, stay tuned on that stuff. Day 52 on my Ultramel Clown clutch. Still no pips, but I mean, any second, we'll cut them on Instagram. That's going to be a cool one. I got 10 eggs from that first time girl. Let's see what else. This weekend in Des Moines, if I got to meet you there, thanks for tuning in. If I did, and if I didn't get to meet you there, it's a good show. You should go if you're near Des Moines, and that Cold Blooded Expos. They put on a good show. That's Jason is the promoter. He does a nice job on those shows. So Des Moines was my 6th show in 5 consecutive weekends. I'm beat. I'm not even feeling that well tonight. This afternoon, everything just kind of hit me, and my body was like, I've had enough, man. So we're gonna get through tonight. But thanks if you guys got to come out. If I saw you anywhere in the past 5 weeks, man, what a fun run. I was in, let me think, Minnesota, Illinois, Chicago. I was in Wisconsin, back to Minneapolis or Minnesota suburb. Fargo, North Dakota, and then Des Moines, Iowa. So like, how cool is this? It's a lot of work, but I get to do cool stuff. I get to go hang out in these cool cities and travel and that kind of stuff. So I'm off this weekend. Next weekend, I'll be in Kansas City. And then one more show at home in December with Snake Discovery. So a couple more chances. Properroyals.com is being updated as we speak. I spent today cleaning up, updating that, making sure that's accurate. So check it out. I got some new things on there. And then, like I say, I've got an Ultramel Clown clutch coming up. There is a chance for double visuals on that one. And then in 4 days after that, another one, but that one's got pinstripe in the mix along with blade. And then what else is on the horizon? I've got some Enchi Clown head Ultramel stuff. That's on the horizon. And then another girl chalet in about 10 days, another big ovulation when I got home Sunday night from Des Moines. So good stuff always cooking. I think from like moving to Minnesota from Florida, like I think I have like 2 seasons instead of just one like year-long season. I think I have like 2 6-month season. Actually, I'm going to ask DJ that about animals that he gets from different parts of the world, what they do, and how long if they just sort of keep that, or if after a while they sort of combine their schedules. Anyhow, properroyals.com. Check that out. Got a new project in the works with Chris Eaton, a little bit off the beaten path. That will be a audio. I don't know if it'll be audio or audio and video. No, it's got to be video. It's going to be a video monthly episode that we do for Patreon only. So you either got to be in Chris's Fat Man Nation Patreon or in the Proper Royals Patreon to catch that stuff. We'll be working on that project starting tomorrow. I'm not sure when it's going to actually premiere, but that will be there. I also do a once monthly audio only podcast with Shane from Small Town Exotics, and that airs on his Patreon and mine as well. So check that out. Maybe you find a little bit of value in there. The one other thing I'm working on, I always have tons of things, but one of the things I'm working on, there's an app called Palm Street, Palm Street, Palm Street. And it started as a place, as a plant selling, like a live plant market. It's almost like Instagram and TikTok meet Etsy or something like that. Like it's a sales platform, but it's a social media sales platform. Anyway, they have started to roll out reptile sales, specifically gecko sales, but also ball python sales. And I'm working with them. I'll be one of the, I don't think it's beta testing. I think beta testing is done. I think that was the geckos, but I'll be one of the very first ball python breeders on there. And I'm contemplating when to go live on those shows. I'm thinking, I don't know, if you've used Palm Street, feel free to reach out to me or mention in the comments what you think or what the time is. But I got to figure out, I got to learn Palm Street. I'm learning it as quick as I can. But anyway, I'll be on there soon, but you should download the app and check it out. One thing that is going to happen this weekend at NARBC, St. Louis, NARBC, Redline Shipping, and Palm Street will be doing a live auction starting at noon. And these are fast auctions. I'm talking like 2 minutes each or something. Like you got to like serious FOMO, like you got to get after it. You got to get competitive and make sure you're on time. So I think they're going to do 10 auctions in 20 minutes. Merch, animals, different species, art, I don't know, maybe tickets. I'm not sure, but 10 different things will, maybe some shipping stuff or Redline science stuff. I'm not sure, but it's NARBC, Redline, and Palm Street all together that will be doing auctions live from St. Louis this weekend. Maybe both days, for sure Saturday at noon, though. So check that out. Let me know what you think, but keep an eye out, too. And if you have Palm Street already, give me a follow on there. I hate asking for followers, but I got to figure this thing out and learn it as quick as possible. So any feedback on the tests that I do or the first few shows that I do would be very welcomed and appreciated. So check it out. Palm Street. Doesn't cost you anything to check out. Give it a shot. Oh, and the real estate saga continues. I'll fill everybody in when there's time for that, or maybe me and Joe will get into that Thursday morning. Nothing really to report on it other than I am still after it, and I am still looking for a commercial building. I think I have it narrowed down to 2. Like I say, we'll get into that on another episode, or even maybe I'll leave that with Joe. Tonight, DJ Van Wick. I don't know DJ very, very well, but I met him in Tinley. And the cool thing about Tinley is like you meet people at the show, but then there's like the after hours meetups as well. And I will admit, I was a few Heinekens in, and when I ran into DJ, and we got talking, and I immediately was like, man, let me buy you a beer. And so we got talking, and really insightful about business, different perspective from an international view of the reptile business worldwide, but also our market here in America versus other markets, kind of gave me a little bit of perspective. And I just wanted to dig deeper tonight. And I thought he'd be a great guest for you guys to meet if you haven't met him. And we get so like almost tunnel vision with our own circles and our own like Instagram world. And here's DJ from the outside of that, which we might follow him on Instagram, but it was great to hear the difference in perspective on the market, different ways to figure out how to survive in the market. And I mean, DJ's all over the place, almost literally when I say worldwide shipping and that sort of thing. So without further ado, like I say, it is 3:14 in the morning in South Africa right now. I can't say thanks enough. Please welcome to the Proper Royal stage for the very first time, DJ Van Wick from Reptiles for Centuries. DJ, how you doing tonight, man?
Hey, Adam, how you doing, man?
I am good. I'm good. Thank you so much for being there. Like it looks like you just woke up and you're just sitting in a dark room, man. Like I thank you for being
man,
here.
it's not untrue. I mean, like I told you, I think it was two phones and an alarm clock just to make sure that I'm awake for the episode. So it sounded like a musical parade early this morning with all of the different alarm clocks going off. But yeah, no, thanks for the opportunity. I really do appreciate, you giving me the chance to be on your show.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And I genuinely, I enjoyed our conversation. I even think it was like, we both were like, man, it's getting late. We got a long day tomorrow. Like we got to wrap this up, and it's a busy time too. Like everybody's like the amount of people, I'm sure you must feel this way too, but like the people that you both respect or that you want to meet, or people that you meet and maybe you don't know at that moment, but then like you connect the dots when you get home or you're checking on the phone and you're like, oh my God, that was that guy or that's that person, or I don't know who that is, but people need to know who that is. Like it's such a cool scene,
No, for sure, man. I mean, I think, honestly, Tindley is so big, I mean, there's so many different breeders and, different people who just come and, attend the show. I mean, I think this last time, it's really hard to grasp how many people we actually, meet at the show like this, even for myself, I think in terms of the different people that I met in this show, it could be, combined, maybe over a couple of years in South African expo terms, if you get what I'm saying,
Right.
So,
Yeah.
no, it was crazy. I must say, Tinley Park was a great experience. I mean, like you said, there's actually not enough time. I think, you always almost need to make it 2 weekends, and to really, to get through everything and, speak to everyone what you want to, in a sense.
Yeah. If you're not going for a business purpose, it's probably a real blast, and it's a real blast anyhow. But from a business standpoint, it's incredibly long days. Like you say, there's only a finite amount of time. So even though it's essentially 3 days, trying to get any kind of FaceTime or relationships with anybody, keeping track of anybody. We were talking in the green room about like modern technology, us talking in real time, halfway across the world. But the technology of us being able to keep track of who we met and who to follow up with, even through something as casual as Instagram, is incredibly helpful too. Like I couldn't imagine 20 years ago with a notebook trying to make all those contacts that we do,
Send one of those migrating birds or whatever to send you a note or something like that.
Man, I don't know if you saw it. I had Brian Gundy on maybe a month or so ago. And he used to really be into racing pigeons. He had homing pigeons, and we spent like 30 minutes talking about homing pigeons on the show, man.
It's crazy, I think in terms of those racing pigeons, if I'm correct, they're one of the most sought after birds. Well, not most sought after, but definitely one of the most sought after birds now currently. In terms of rarity and stuff.
I'm sure that like the rest of the world is going, yeah, I had no idea ball pythons were sought after, but that's how I feel when I hear racing pigeons. I'm like, I had no idea that anybody wants these. No idea.
It's crazy, for an outsider, I think most people always think I'm crazy if I say I breed with reptiles or with snakes or whatever, but that's how it is, we always, different industries can, open up new doors and stuff, so it's always great to see what everyone else does.
I think it is. And it's, I'm at a different, a whole new arena right now, because I'm trying to find commercial space. And at least in here in my local area in Minnesota, the zoning and permitting for any business, a town basically has to say, okay, you can do your business here, which I always thought was like, hey, I own the building, it's legal, piss off. It doesn't matter what you think I can or can't do, but it's really not that easy. And you could even get away with something like that for a little while. But if a town decides they want to convene the town council and make an ordinance against you, then you got a 6 or 7 figure problem on your hands, and nothing you can do about it other than, what am I going to fight town hall or whatever the saying is. So yeah, it's always like, hey, I'm calling, I want to find out about doing business and this and that. And they're like, all right, tell us about your business. And I'm like, okay, well, I want to bring hundreds of pythons to your quaint town, preferably downtown, convenient to the interstate. And I think I can be a valuable asset there, and it takes a minute to get over that,
Yeah, I don't know if it's, well, like you said, the zoning is always not a problem, but I think, like even locally here, we've got what we call bylaws, which is what, just government regulations in terms of what you can do on your residential property. And then, if it's a business property, it's a bit better. But it is a bit of a difficult one, because we're not in a common industry, where you can walk up to someone and say, listen, I want to keep, like you said, 1,000 snakes in, a certain warehouse or whatever. It's not as easy, and I think, where we've got a bit maybe luckier is, some ground is this, especially some, farms and stuff, is a bit more inexpensive here. Inexpensive in terms of the US market value, but in South African terms, it's still quite expensive. But you need to be really precise in your planning, because like you said, you don't want to put up a big building and then after 2 years or 3 years they tell you, listen, you're not allowed to to keep the animals here. Then you invested all of the time and effort into it.
Yeah, and I think as much as like I have a streak to be like, this is mine, I own this, I like a good fight and all that, but honestly, it's not worth it. It's worth having everything agreed upon ahead of time and not being stuck. I don't have time in my life to spend the next year trying to convince a small town that the building that I own is where I should be able to do this if they don't want me there, And so, but I have to say, actually, it's all been very positive. It has taken a little bit of time, but in the grand scheme of things, 2 or 3 days of a zoning guy doing research isn't that big of a deal. So it actually has been positive when I've told people. And the fact is, sellers want my money's just as green. They want the money for their facility. The town doesn't want empty buildings. They want tax revenue. And a lot of these smaller towns still want to grow. So they see something new coming in versus just another, clothing store as an opportunity. So, we'll see where it lands.
I think it's a small, I always speak about, opportunity cost, in a sense where, it's a small sacrifice where you, like you said, you wait 2 or 3 days to wait it out, before making a decision, or whether it being 2 days or 3 days or even 2 or 3 weeks, it's just, for the long term, then at least, you are safe and, above board, because like you said, we already have enough stress with the animals. The animals are great, but they're stressful, because it's live animals in a sense. But so we don't want to make unnecessarily, more stress for ourselves. So I think if you plan it out well and you know what you want to achieve, and like you said, I think it's a win-win for government, yourself, and the business property owner. Because at the end of the day, he's getting revenue or he's getting an income, and you're also furthering the economy in the local town, like you said, so I think it's a win-win for every party involved.
So on that topic, tell us a little bit about the scope of your operation. And sorry, we jumped right into it. For people that don't know, tell us about Reptiles for Centuries. I don't think we have to go back, 20 years to the first time you held I don't know. In America, we always hear the garter snake was the first thing, but whatever the first reptile you ever held. But tell us about your company. If people aren't familiar, they should be, man. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I'm DJ from Reptiles for Centuries, and we're based here in Pretoria, South Africa. So Reptiles for Centuries. I came up with the business idea name, or the name of Reptiles for Centuries, in 2013. Prior to that, I was keeping ball pythons and different species of animals, more reptiles, mostly as pets. And then I think it was 2012 or 2013 when I saw the first pied ball python, and I was like, this is incredible.
Right.
Prior to that, I had a normal pair of ball pythons, but they were always just pets. I didn't really have any interest in breeding animals, and until I saw the first pied ball python, and my fascination, really started to kick off for them. And I mean, it's been 10 years, roughly 10 years later, and I eat, dream, and sleep snakes. So that's the thing. So the ball pythons are incredible, and I think I always say if the general public or everyone was involved with ball pythons, I think they would be one to cater for them. So yeah, no, the ball pythons are incredible. So we mainly focus with ball pythons currently. I do have a few odds and ends in terms of other species, which I don't necessarily breed. I have bred a few other species in the past. My first snake clutch ever was a Burmese python by mistake, actually. So
That's a tough mistake, man. That's a steep hill to be responsible for.
Especially if you 13, or I think I was 12 years old, actually. Then it's a bit of a different. I mean,
How did
just to
that
get my parents
conversation go
to.
with your parents?
Yeah, man. Currently I still have that female. I actually called her Burmese. So I've had her now for 14 years, and I always say to people, she's like my daughter, because I've known the animal, I've grown up with her, I know her personality, and so it's crazy to think, that we can actually keep these animals for a lifetime.
Right.
It's longer than I've kept any of my dogs in the past, and I consider her one of our, family pets, just because she's always been with us.
Yeah, no, that is cool. And that's a good point too. It's not just jeans and drawers that we're mixing up. Like there is the real animal, the live animal part of it, and that care that goes with it too.
No, for sure. I mean, if you look at it, I always say, this is not a normal, any other industry or any other business. In other business, like you said now with your introductions, I take my hat off firstly for you for doing 6 shows in a row. That's crazy amount of dedication, and
I only do it once a year, that many. Well, I mean, I do a lot of shows a year, but I average about 2 a month, but there's this crazy opportunity that came up this time.
but I mean, still 2 a month, is already, crazy numbers. I mean, it's 24 a year. It's not. Um, I mean, even 20 shows or whatever, it's already a lot of shows. So, but yeah, it's great that you're trying to put yourself out there and further your brand, and just get more exposure, which I always say is the best way to get yourself out there.
Yeah, I don't know if I got lucky or this area of the United States, but the shows have been really good by and large. I always used to say in the restaurants, I hate working hard when I have nothing to show for it, and I don't care how hard I work if I have a great result to show for it. And this past 5 weeks has been a fantastic result. I would do it again. Honestly, I'd suit up and do another 5 in a row if I knew it would be the same
Oh,
outcome
really?
again.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Awesome.
been really very good. Now, obviously, the market would get saturated if it was just that endlessly. It can be saturated with snakes. It can also be saturated with shows. So, I mean, this was just it worked out well. So anyhow, I'm thankful for it, but I am looking forward to the rest. As much as I say I'd go out and do it again, I'm looking forward to some rest this
Yeah.
weekend.
Yeah, I think as well, I think it's good to, have some sort of break as well, just to, for yourself to recoup, and,
Yeah.
and also, to plan accordingly, because also, if you're at the shows and stuff, you still have the other animals at the house that needs to be taken care of, so it's a constant upkeeping of, of the snakes, because it's not like any other product or, something else. You can't just put it on the shelf and let it wait for a month or so. It's I mean, even at our own collection, I've got a real great employee. He's been, you know, with myself also for actually 10 years now. So
Really? Wow.
yeah,
You
a
got to,
really good guy. And
yeah.
you know, when yeah, so he's really good with the animals. I always say he's better than I am, you know, in terms of, you know, cleaning the animals, feeding, you know, just the general care.
Yep.
And that's, you know, we make a good team because he's good in that side, and I'm good at, you know, IDing and doing the breeding and stuff like that. But I mean, he's constantly, you know, busy with the animals, Monday to Friday, and then over the weekends, you know, I take care of them, you know. And it's literally, you know, constant opening up the enclosures, making sure everything is fine. And you know, it's very important to observe what the animals are doing, that you can, you know, also form an opinion, you know, about the snake, of how's the general condition, and you know what it did previously, especially in breeding times. I think that's really important to, you know, to track the females and see, you know, how's their behavior towards a male or towards food, or what they're doing in terms of the inside the tub itself, you know.
Yeah, I would agree. Bob Vu was on the show one time, and he talked to me about his organizational structure. And I can't remember if he said 2 or 3 people that worked with him. But instead of having like one was on cleaning duty, one was on snake duty, one was on feeding duty, he divided it up as these animals are yours to take. You take care of
Yes,
top to bottom those animals for just what you're saying, so they could get to know the animals. They're going to know who's eating well, the body condition, who's behaving well. If their poo is different from the day before, which I know is a weird sentence to say out loud, but you know what I'm talking about. If you
yeah, for
can,
sure.
you know, you can see and smell differences if there's an issue. And I thought that was a really interesting point, and you're bringing up the same. And I think that's something for the audience to think of, not necessarily from an employment standpoint, but from just a ongoing care and an ongoing relationship with those animals as you do breed them and work more and
Yeah.
more with them.
Yeah, I think, you know, like you said, I think Bob has got a great. I was also lucky enough to, you know, visit his facility. He was a really,
Oh, cool.
himself and Mary were really great hosts, and you know, I had a really good time at his place. And yeah, I must say, you know, he also gave me some, you know, great intel, which I really do appreciate. And I think he's got a great system. You know, like you said, I think his animals, his facility is really well organized. He's got plenty of space, and you know, like I said, I was lucky to spend 2 or 3 days at his facility, and it's constant cleaning. You know,
Right.
they the whole time cleaning the animals, and like you said, different sections for his different employees. And I think I think the upkeeping is, you know, the most important. You know, you can have the best animals in the world, but if your standards are not, you know, if you're not looking after the animals, then they're not going to look after you. You know, I always say, if you look after the snakes or look after your animals, they'll take care of yourself. You know, whether that being financially, being a companion animal, or whatever. You know, whatever you want to achieve, not through the animal, but the relationship with the animal can be achieved if you take care of them as well.
No, I would definitely agree with that, and good words to practice by too. I think is a good way to put it. Let's switch gears here. How did some 11 years ago you start Reptiles for Centuries? How do you go from being amazed by a pied ball python to, and this is a big question, but to today? You know, you and I sat and talked for a long time about you exporting snakes and somebody like myself or anybody in America trying to import snakes. This is complicated, man. I don't think a whole lot of people just wake up and go, you know what? Pretoria is not cutting it anymore. Let's go to the United States, Thailand, and
Yeah.
Canada, or Northern Europe, or wherever. What's how did all that happen?
So, so basically, you know, like our local market is, you know, so it's difficult to put it in perspective, you know, compared to the US, you know, because we really can't even actually put it in, you know, we can't really actually, how can you say, weigh it out to each other, because it's such a rapid difference. You know, I think
And yeah, sorry, I
locally.
asked such a massive question. Let's start. Let's go back. What is the local market like? Is there a pet market for ball pythons? What's the breeder scene like? What's going on there in South Africa?
So there's actually really a handful, you know, a couple of great breeders here locally. which is really, catching up, or not catching up, but producing some, awesome animals. And some of them have been producing for, plenty of years. I mean, there's actually one breeder, Russi Erasmus of BPM Reptiles, which has been, you know, um, in the ball python industry. Even when I started out, he was one of the first persons where I bought, one of my original ghost females and a head ghost male. And so locally, the pet market, I would say we've got a quite a decent pet market. Um, but I'm going to be honest with you, it's not to the point where, the excess animals that we do produce, we've got a large enough market for them to actually sell them. It's still a bit
Right.
difficult for those pet animals.
Hmm.
So the pet market, I think, is quite decent, but it's nothing, compared to what you guys have. And I think in terms of, other breeders and, big investors and stuff, we do have, the odd occasion, someone coming into the market, and, coming in quite hot, buying certain animals. And, but that's also very few yearly, maybe
Right.
between the circle of, in South Africa, it's maybe 10 breeders yearly, which will, have a huge influx of, investment into the animals. And then I speak about, let's say, $5,000 or more, I'd say is, um, already a huge investment, even for myself. It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Um, so I think in terms of the local scene, I think we don't get enough recognition. Or we're actually getting more recognition now because there is some great animals being produced here, and I just think we don't have necessarily the right exposure, to to expos, to shows, to whatever, even podcasts. There's a very
Mhm.
few podcasts. I think there was one podcast many years ago here locally, but the guys, I think, stopped doing it because there wasn't really such a high interest in it, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah. How for us ignorant Americans, myself included, what's the population of South Africa approximately?
I think it's last time, I think it was 55 million,
Okay,
which
okay.
are, so I think 55 million is what, yeah, illegal people here in South Africa. And then honestly, we've got a few, um, I think also a couple of million of illegal immigrants, or immigrants from other countries, which I completely understand, because I mean we also, in South Africa, in a sense, where which in terms of Africa, there's not a lot of resources and stuff, so a lot
Right.
of people come to South Africa to better their lives as well. So I'd say probably, including all people, around between 65 million to 70 million. Eh?
Okay, so that's a sizable market though. If and then like I say, everything in my mind in geography, everything is just so American centric. I don't know how big like physically it is, but how far are the cities, or how far is the drive across,
Yeah.
say across the country?
So, for instance, so I'm in basically the capital, of South Africa, or almost in the capital of South Africa. So to drive to, for instance, to Cape Town, which is, you know, I'd say almost going across country, is around 1,500 kilometers. So I think that is what, 1,000 miles roughly.
Yeah, about 2/3. So yeah, about 1,000 miles. Okay, so that's half the size of the United States. Okay, so all right, so that's a
Yeah,
pretty big span. So it's not just like, hey, I can call up Bobby that's, around the corner. He
no,
might be across the state, or so you're shipping across South Africa as well, not just driving and delivering and whatnot.
yeah. And the thing is, like for instance, we don't have like a FedEx company or something like this, where we can ship the animals to your door or whatever. We actually have like private couriers,
Mm,
um, which literally we have to go and drop off the animal at a central point. They apply for a, because you have to have like interstate or cross-state, whatever, permits, to travel
sure.
with the animals. So they apply for the permits, and then we send them via that, because that's the only feasible and the only way to really to get the animals cross country. Yes, we can also use what we call bid air cargo, which is doing some domestic flights. But it's also sometimes hard because they don't always have flights to a certain area or whatever. So but yeah, so the thing is, in terms of even though we've got a how can you say, quite a big population, or somewhat of a big population, I'd say almost at least 95% of the people in South Africa are I'm not deathly afraid of snakes, but really afraid of snakes. Even growing up, my granddad was also really scared of the snakes. He never knew. He actually passed away when I was quite young, so I actually just got an animal, my first reptile, I think, a couple of years prior to him passing, and he never knew I had a snake, because he would not, come into the house if he knew that I had a snake. So
Right.
I think there's a misperception always, in terms of the animals, and I always say I think if you start working with them and really understand them, then you will fell in love, or fell in love with them. So um, I think in terms of the reptile keepers in South Africa, we also recently started SA Arc, which is the same as USA Arc, which is only starting to take off now. And I think on that group, so we've got like a WhatsApp chat group for members, and just a general group. But yeah, just to put that in perspective, I think there's like 700 people on the one group. So I think in terms of the community of reptile keepers, I'd say like breeders and people keeping it at the larger scale, I'd say larger scale being, let's say 5 or more animals, would be less than 5,000 for sure.
Yeah, but that is a sizable community, though. That is a good something to start off with, and the base to grow. And I think, like, we know from this audience, because we can look at the morph market metrics and all that. But if we had thought, like, before we knew anything, if we had been like, I don't know, if somebody had told me there was 100 people per state that had 10 or more reptiles, I would have been like, I don't know, that seems like a lot. And now I'm like, oh yeah, there's thousands that have that many,
For
like
sure.
I had no idea. So so it's hard to unknow what I know now. So I'm just trying to put myself back in that headspace. But I think 5,000, that's a lot of people, especially if they have 5 or 10 animals or plus each.
Yeah, I mean that is a ballpark figure.
Sure.
But I think definitely our community is bigger than what it looks like. I think, like I said, I think we don't really always get the exposure, in a sense, or we don't really always put ourselves out there. So I think in the next years, I think definitely um, the community will grow, and more people will get involved. And yeah, every couple of years we see a huge inflection, or what, I hope that's the right word, but a huge burst in interest in the reptiles, which is good, because I always say, also one of my long-term plans, would be to get actually some animals into high schools and primary schools,
Right.
even if it's you know, even if it's just a normal, and we can, as a community, donate a enclosure with an animal, make sure it's got the proper upkeeping and everything, to already stimulate that interaction with reptiles or whatever from a young early age. Because I think that's the most important thing. We need to get new people into the hobby, and show them the true potential of just keeping a reptile, not even breeding a reptile.
Well, and that's a long-term payoff too. It's so hard. It's hard for us to look 3 years into the future on a breeding project, much less generations into the future. But I do think it's important, and I think communities that have done that are successful. Businesses that have done that are going to be successful, and I do think it's a important piece for our industry as well. How where do the breeding stock, or where did it come from? I mean, I know it came from Africa. in your community though, Africa's a big place. They just didn't pop up one day. You know, DG hypos didn't just pop up in Pretoria one day. Where did that come from? What's the storyline of that? Because like you've got some nice stuff. Like it's one thing to get sort of traction and internationally known, you know, because of social media or whatever. But at the end of the day, I think the animals and the content have to back it up, and you have both. So where does some of that lineage come from in your experience?
Yeah, so I must say in I think 2016 and 2017 where I purchased most of my foundational animals, which I've still have some of them in my collection. So some of the animals came from Mark Mandic up
Okay.
in Canada,
Did you get to
and
see him at Tinley?
yes, I was lucky enough to
Cool.
meet
Yeah.
Mark. Yeah, he was
Yeah.
also really cool to meet him after, having plenty of his animals. I said to him, one of his snakes actually that I've got still from him many years ago. She's a bit of a more of the one of them who's a bit more of a trickier female. She actually broke one of my employees' phones the one day because she was on the table and she wanted to not be on the table and she pushed off the phone, but one of the foundational animals. And then back then, I think till 2018, Justin was still doing some exports to South Africa,
Mm-hmm.
and I always, picked certain animals. So I'd say between um, Marcus Jane, Justin, and then some of my original pied animals also came from Steve Roos's of Roos's Reptiles.
Sure.
So I'd say my majority of my original animals up until 2017 came from those three main breeders.
Mm-hmm.
And so back when I started, so in 2017 was really my biggest season. That's where I put everything into it, and I guess I started to produce those animals for my collection. So in 2017, everyone thought I was crazy because I was making double head pairings and doing different double head pairings, just to make those new combos. And like you said, visually they weren't most probably the most expressive animals.
Right. And that was kind of ahead of that double and triple het curve, or double and triple recessive curve.
Yeah, but I mean, 2020, when I bred with those females for the first time, it
Yeah.
was definitely worth it,
I bet it was. Yeah.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's when the Ultramore Clowns and the Ultramore Hyper Clown stuff came through, and then I was very fortunate again, to have made those, so um, but yeah, so most of the animals now in my collection, I'd say is around, I'd say 80% is self-produced, and then the other 20% is, either new additions or animals we've had for, almost some of them 10 years, or a bit less.
Do you guys get, and I'm asking some of you directly, but also some of your community, do you get a lot of trade with the European breeders north of you, or do you see mostly from, it looks like no, mostly from the
No.
United States?
Yeah, so there is, like a few shipments that do come in yearly. Um, I have done a few trades and a few transactions with UK and Europe breeders. Um, but locally, really to import, reptiles in general, or any animal is really difficult, So we've got a 1 month quarantine period where we need to
Oh,
quarantine and yeah, where we need
on
to
your end or in Europe?
no in our at
On
our
your
end.
end, yeah.
So that's at a government regulated quarantine facility. Um, so not everyone has got, access to those facilities, and it's not always easy to get, access to those facilities. So, and also just with, I think the amount of, stress and everything that goes into importing the animals, a lot of people just shy away from it, because you really need to make it well worth your time to, to bring in a shipment of animals. You can't just bring in one or two of them, eh?
Yeah, we were talking about that in person. I mean, just the logistics of that are challenging. What and we're actually I want to spend quite a bit of time on that here coming up in just a minute. What are there any genes that you see that are evolving there, and not evolving in the wild. That's not the case there in South Africa, but evolving in people's collections or on the breeder scene there in South Africa that either haven't made their way to the United States, or that you're excited about that are just now coming here, or something that you see that hasn't quite taken off in this market here? What are anything different that way?
Yeah, so one of them, so we'll get to like Dinka projects on newer genes. But yeah, one of the foundational projects, yeah, I'd say in South Africa has been VPI Exantic. We've been, not myself actually, but other breeders has produced exceptional animals in the VPI project. And I think honestly they didn't get the recognition, 2019 or 2018 when they did produce those animals, because back then, no one really wanted to work with Exantic, so it's crazy to see how times has changed again. But I think we, especially in general co-doms, in terms of VPI Exantics, I think we've got quite good selection and good variety of different animals. And in terms of newer genes, there's a few breeders, focusing on furthering those genes, like Dinka genes. One of them being BPM Reptiles. They've always been the forefront of, in terms of proving out new genetics and bringing them to the market. So one of their genes is the furrow gene. I don't know if you've seen it.
I have.
And
Yeah, it started
and this,
to make its way in, furrow. And how's the other one? Nyala, something like that.
yeah, Nyala, and then they've got Striker as well. Striker is another interesting one, which is, a lot of people believe it's the same as Mackenzie or Zebra.
Oh,
I honestly still believe there is somewhat of a difference, but I always say it always comes down to breeding the animals physically, so we hopefully we'll put that to test next year by breeding Pastel, Zebra, or whatever, to a Striker or whatever, just to, I think it's still good to minimalize and see what exactly, eliminate all possible factors. If it's a new gene, great. If it's the same as Zebra, okay, then at least we know,
right.
And I think BPM Reptiles, are actually work quite closely also with Rassi of BPM Reptiles, and he's also at the same point where we really hope it's actually something completely different, because I think it is. And I said as well, I think if it's something new, then it's a win-win. I think, because if it proves out to be the same as Zebra, yes, it's going to be cool. Then we've got new combos in the Zebra project, but it's not a new gene necessarily.
Right.
So but in terms of other genes, which is actually not even been, it's not even been sold locally. There's, from BPM Reptiles again, they've got a few, like I said, Dinka projects. I think the one they are calling, there's actually too many, because these projects take so long. But I think
They take forever, yeah, and you never know what name's going to stick or if it's going to get updated. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think there's Zodiac, there's Ginger. Ginger is actually one which I'm excited for them, because I think that's got the most potential, in my opinion, just what I've seen visually of the animals. So I think definitely in the next 2 to 3 years, I think there should be some newer genetics or base morphs coming out of South Africa again, which will be cool again to see, what later in the future, yet again, will we have the debate if it's the same as another gene or not. But I think there is definitely some things which is completely different, which will come out of, especially South Africa soon. Eh?
No, I think that's cool. I think, actually, I know, and I would be remiss if I stated anything other than that's being worked on. But aside from, like you say, breeding, isolating variables, isolating genes, this day and age, speaking of technology, man, the genetic testing that we have available to us now is incredible as well.
It's crazy.
And I know that the guys are investigating Zebra and Mackenzie, and I suspect Striker, but I don't know how prevalent the Striker samples are here in the United States. So I actually have some Mackenzie, but
Okay, nice.
all I'll say is that they're working on it. Obviously, when they've science takes time too. They have to have their sample sizes and prove what they're
Yeah.
saying. We've all seen what happens when we jump the gun. So I'm not the person to say what's happening or not happening, but I know that they are working on it from that angle as well.
No, great. I mean, yeah, like you said, it's crazy to think, we've got shed testing,
It's
it's
like space age stuff, man.
when I also, I think it came out 2022 or, I think 2022,
Yeah, it's
it was
really
crazy to
recent.
me,
Yeah.
you know. So, I mean, it's awesome, and it shows you that our industry is actually bigger than what I think we always think, even like I said, like we spoke now, you said, like our community locally is small, but it's also large somewhat, it's not as small community, and I think always we underestimate, the power actually that the power, but how big the reptile industry is and actually how evolving it is,
Yeah.
because I mean, I spoke to, I don't know where I watched it or where I heard it, but I mean, they say, for instance, the reptile industry or the pet trade, or I think it was specifically the reptile industry in the United States is a $1 billion trade, and I
Oh,
can believe it,
most
you
certainly.
know.
At least. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I mean, if I speak to some of the guys at Tinley Park, in terms of, just some of the sales they made, it's crazy actually to think, that you can charge, something like that for an animal, and but it always comes down to also, it's a lot of time and effort, and there's a lot of variables as well that comes into play to producing that animal.
Right.
So that's I think if we can put that in perspective, and then you can really grasp everything.
That's some of the educational difficulty, to go back to the simplest terms. If I meet somebody or socially or have family over for Thanksgiving and I show them, and inevitably, well, how much are these? Yeah, well, I've got some that are $40 and I've got some that are $3,000, and like
Exactly.
$40, they're like, yeah, 3,000. It's like, just pause in the conversation and they just stare at me. And then
Yeah,
inevitably
exactly.
they're like, wait a minute, how many of each? And I'm like, don't worry, it's one thing to say they're that much. You got to get
Yeah.
the money first. And then second, like you say, to try and educate people, just because they're worth that or that I paid that for them, doesn't mean they'll be worth that when I go to sell them or when I can produce offspring from them. There's all the market forces and the fluctuation, which is a
Yes.
nightmare to even after as long as we've been at this to get our heads around, much less to explain somebody to new, like, hey, you got to really like think this through and understand that the time involved too.
Yeah, and like you said, now I think you're never gonna, you can from the start, what you paid for an animal is not necessarily what you're gonna get, unless it's something like paint, it's actually crazy to think, 10 years, literally 10 years ago, I could have bought from Chunku, from Dynasty Reptiles, I could have bought 20 paints for the same price as a male banana. And, what I opted for was the male banana, so in hindsight, it was probably,
Was he a male maker or a female maker in
it
hindsight?
was a male, it
Oh,
was a male maker, and he never bred, that was the worst thing,
oh
so,
man. Jeez.
um, but yeah, I think I always say as well, whether if you look at monetary value, you're not always gonna necessarily recoup everything, in the first 5 years, especially with a certain project. But
Right.
I think if you take long term, what that certain, let's say for instance, you work stranger and you produce strangers, and the first season you produce stranger hit ultramals. But let's say 5 or 10 years later, when you do produce the stranger Batman or Ultramall, for instance, or whatever, then you can say, okay, over the course of years, this animal has had a huge, how can you say, effect, or had a huge influence in the collection itself in terms of furthering the genetics.
Right.
And also, over the years, you'll see you did make somewhat of your investment back, and also made a somewhat probably of a not a, I would say gain, but definitely a gain in towards your collection and furthering the collection.
Oh, the caliber of it. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we talked earlier about use the word quality. I think quality and caliber are two things. Like you can have very high caliber animals if you don't take care of them, they're going to be low quality. You take care of them, they'll be very high quality. But yeah, I think the best, like a lot of the best return is the caliber of the ingredients we get to work with over time. Sure, you can buy it, but at some point you either acquiesce to losing money if you just buy your way to the top, or you work hard at it and you hold back the best stuff and you make smart investments to add the ingredients along the way. And that's something I'm experiencing right now, which is a really kind of a neat feeling. This is just past 4 years for me. So some of the first things that I produced have started breeding, and then there's each successive year of animals growing up too. So I think the caliber improvement is fantastic. DJ, it's the time of the night where I've got to give a little thanks to the people that support the show above us there, but I want to ask you about the international trade, some of the logistics of the international shipping, and what makes that even make sense. It all sounds so difficult, and yet people do it. So there's got to be something in there. So I'll let you think about that, and I'm going to run down these advertisers for just a minute. Guys, you all know I choose REDLINE Shipping when I ship. It's for their years in the industry. It's for their customer service, their ease of use. It's that time of year. Winter's coming. I live in Minneapolis. Temperatures and shipping are something that can be very daunting and challenging. I just had somebody message me this week about shipping beardies, and I said, you know what? Call the people at REDLINE. That's what they're there for. They're going to help you on it. You're going to get an actual human that understands the reptiles and the reptile industry, and they're going to be there for you. So I like REDLINE Shipping. I think you should give them a try as well. Use the promo code PROPER5. Get yourself another $5 off of your shipping label, and have the peace of mind knowing that you've got the REDLINE team behind you. Speaking of genetic testing, I also definitely always choose shedtesting.com. That's Charlie. Charlie's the one doing the testing. He's doing the research on his genetic tests. He works with other geneticists around the world to be able to further his library of what he can test for. But he also is doing the research himself on a lot of tests and creating those tests himself. He's customer service. He is the tester. He is the advertiser. He's the guy doing it all. And I'm so happy for him and so excited to see the progress that he's made and really the benefit that he's brought to our community. Like in one way, like the business part of it is cool, but like DJ and I were just marveling at like, we could skip all the isolation stuff if we want to. There's still value in that and identifying what the gene characteristics are. But from a genetic standpoint, we don't have to do that anymore. So check out shedtesting.com. You're going to get 15% off of 2 orders if you use the promo code PROPER15. And on those orders, you can order as many shed tests as you want. You just have to order them all at the same time. So any number of individual shed tests, you'll get 15% off. So if you've got a bundle, save them up and then buy them at once and really maximize that discount that you get. So Charlie will take care of you. I'm happy to be doing work with him. RGen Reptiles, that's Robbie down in Greer, South Carolina. He is, speaking of breeding, double, single, triple, quad. I don't know if he's up to quads yet. He probably is, of recessive projects. He's got some incredibly cool stuff going on. And it's a cool time of year because a lot of hatchlings are hitting Morph Market right here, right now on Morph Market. Robbie's got a male double visual DG clown available. He's got ingredients for zebra clown animals. What else is on? Oh, combos for zebra clowns. So check those out. DG Krypton Hepide as well is available on there from Robbie. He knows what he's doing and he's a great guy to do business with. I've been able to do some business with him outside of this advertising before, and always happy to be aligned with Robbie. He's a great guy. Portuguese Pythons is Danny and Renee Rocha out in Chino, California. Also people that I trust incredibly. I got all of my ingredients for my Ultramel Pied project from them. They kind of specialize in the dark genes in Ultramel is one of the things I should say that they specialize in. And I'm absolutely hooked. So you'll see a lot more of those in the future. But speaking of, I mentioned that a lot of hatchlings are hitting the market right now. Likewise on theirs, they've just updated their Morph Market, 36 new animals are on there. There's an Ultramel Clown, double visual. That's a female. She's available on there right now. Ultramel puzzle ingredients are on there. What else is on there? Again, like I say, dark jeans, leopard Ultramel stuff is on there. GHI, blackhead, black pastel, more GHI. Hypo, DG, VPI, triple hets are on there as well. So it's a great time. Go check those out while they are still available from Danny and Renee Rocha at Portuguese Pythons. Trevor at Ball Labs. He's in Aurora, Colorado. Trevor likes to work with like everything and anything that he can get his hands on. So he likes working with jeans that maybe got overlooked in the past or maybe forgotten about and maybe haven't had a chance to be worked into some modern day combos. So that's one of the sort of passions that Trevor works on. But Trevor also is working with, my list is not present, but I could tell you Ultramel, DG, Tri-Stripe, Monsoon, Sunset, any of those. He's got all of those working as well. But on his Morph Market right now, there's a bunch of cool Yellow Belly Complex combos on there from Yellow Belly Gravel, Asphalt, and Spark, as well as Highway. And I think there's some supers on there as well. So check that out in various combos. And Trevor's doing things the right way. He's one of the few rodent breeders that are licensed in Colorado. You do have to be licensed to breed and sell rodents in Colorado. And he is one of those that are inspected and licensed. So know that you're doing business with a guy that does things the right way. Last but not least is Chris at B and S Reptilia, the original sponsor of Proper Royals and my current business partner at Tinley. And we got some other things cooking. We'll unveil that at some point in the near future. But Chris is over in Pennsylvania. And Chris is B and S Reptilia because he works with a variety of species. So ball pythons, blood pythons, locality boas, colubrids, specifically Pituophis, bull pines, and bull snakes and pine snakes, and various combos and morphs as well. So check him out if any of that interests you. He's also the regional distributor of the Chipper Cocoa. Huge thanks to all the sponsors. Thank you all for sitting through those advertisements. They do keep the lights on here, and they're a massive part of the Proper Royals machine and me being able to do this every Tuesday night. Likewise, the guest tonight, DJ, that is DJ Van Wick from Reptiles for Centuries from Pretoria, South Africa. Thank you for being here, man. It is just past 4 a.m. local time there, DJ. Your dedication is second to none, man.
Yeah, you know what, man? I think between the different time zones, you know, being in Thailand for a week, coming back to South Africa for 2 weeks, and then traveling again to the States, you know, I think I'm not sure exactly in which time zone I'm in currently.
I was going to say, you got to be a zombie. I was going to ask I saw your posts from Thailand, but I saw those after you'd been in Tinley. So you were Thailand first, then South Africa, then Tinley?
Yeah. So basically touching base on your previous question of the international shipments and stuff. So we can also speak a bit about Thailand. But yeah, that was really also a completely different experience again to Tinley. In terms of not in terms of the size, but I think just of how the show is run. You know, I think it's completely different to any, you know, major shows worldwide, even locally. You know, our expos are very
what were some examples?
Yeah, so for instance, like locally, our expo is standard, you know, compared to, you know, what Tinley Park would be, not as the magnitude, but in terms of how it's run, the setup, and all of those things. In Thailand, what I observed is, I think people are honestly a bit more open, you know, if you get what I'm saying, in terms of where they keep or do the expos. Like for instance, this expo I think was done in a shopping centrum or shopping mall, which was quite interesting. And they didn't, for instance, charge any interest, charge any entrance into the expo. So that was quite cool. And so at the expo themselves, this was a more of like a ball python specific expo, and which I, you know, really appreciated from the expo is, you know, there's a lot of time and effort, you know, that went into the planning. from the production side, from the physical vendors, people setting up the expo. They also had like a ball python competition.
Oh, cool.
I think there was like 300 animals which were entered into the competition alone, and then they had a panel of guests where we all voted together which is the best animal in that certain complex. For instance, they broke it up into single, double, triple, and then quadruple morphs. And then under each of those categories, there were subcategories. The base animal in the bow complex, yellow belly complex, whatever. And I think that was really great to see that. And another thing is just they've got such a huge appreciation for the animals itself. The people's even like people that never experience the animals, just by seeing them for the first time, you can really see the burst of interest in the animals,
Yeah.
and the joy and stuff. So I must say, really, I'd recommend Thailand to anyone, especially who are going to that expo, just because it was such a great experience. Everyone
How
is so welcoming and
how
and
big was
everything.
it? How many tables would you, or in terms of maybe comparison to Tinley, how big was it?
Yeah, okay, no, certainly it's also still a fraction of the size, but I'd say around uh, let's say 40 vendors,
Okay.
people with tables. But
Yep.
I mean, with saying that, I think there was probably let's say 2,000 ball pythons, or but let's say 1,500. So with saying that, it wasn't a small variety. There was actually I was really impressed with some of the combos that they are producing that side. I think they've got huge potential, with the animals that they're going to produce in the near future as well.
Yeah. And was that in Bangkok? Where was that at?
Yeah, yeah. It was. I
Yeah.
think it was just outside Bangkok. Okay.
I gotcha. I gotcha. Yeah, I need to.
Um,
I have a very dear friend, like brotherly kind of friend. He's from Thailand, man. I gotta go. I have to go one day, man. That's just another good reason for me to go. I gotta time it with the with the ball python expo.
Yeah, no, I must say, really, it was it was really a great experience, and I think, it puts it in perspective. It's crazy to see how different the different countries are in terms of having the expos, having it set up, and yeah, just in general how they do it. But I must say, I can't say anything bad about Tinley or this past expo. I think both sides. It's really well managed and well run, which I think is good for execution and making sure everyone is happy, which is involved. Either being a vendor, or even just coming to the expo attendee.
Yeah, yeah. So did you see what when you travel for that? So I'm guessing that some of it, and sorry, Python Prince, check out the earlier part of the show. We just covered some genes that we might not see here that he sees on the local scene there in South Africa. DJ, when you travel, obviously you're traveling for enjoyment and that's part of it, but there's a business part of it as well. Do you see yourself doing business in Thailand? Do you see that as a fruitful sort of ground to nurture when it comes to business, or is that were you just exploring, or what did you see from that opportunity?
So yeah, no, definitely. I think with this myself traveling to Thailand, we did a shipment the week prior to the expo with some pre-sales, and then we had some animals physically available at the expo as well. So
Oh,
we
cool.
were
Okay.
also one of the vendors there, and yeah, I think there's a huge potential, not just with Thailand itself. I think with all different markets. I always say it's good to probe in a sense, or put the feelers out. Let's say, um, for instance, like many years ago, Japan's market weren't as big. And in 2020, you could have said they Satoshi of I think oh 06 Shockwave, sorry, was the only real guy, and a few other breeders that were keeping animals and were on the reptile scene in Japan. And I mean, fast forward 4 years or 3 years later, I think Japan has been probably one of the bigger markets for the last 2 years. Um, at the time, it will probably slow down. It's like with any market. I think once they start producing, themselves in Japan, I think they're also going to be producing some really crazy animals. I mean, for instance, like look at South Korea. South Korea was also, for a couple of years, some of my best clients. But they're doing a fantastic work that side in South Korea, producing the animals that they need locally. I mean, Park from fabulous reptiles or fabulous pythons in South Korea is producing some of the best, animals, definitely in Asia, and he's definitely competing in the worldwide scene. So I think in terms of the international markets and stuff, I think you need to put yourself out there, and not out there in a sense, you can communicate it on Facebook and Instagram or whatever, but I think it's really important to, let's say, for instance, you want to, test a new market, whether it being, for myself, exporting to America or Americans wanting to export to South Africa. I think you need to touch base with someone, which is local to that scenery, and hear what is the conditions and if it's going to be feasible, and then try and make it work. So I've been exporting now for 6 years, and one of my good clients, and also, uh, I classify him as a good friend. We've never actually had a phone conversation, but we've always spoken on, WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger.
Yeah.
But he's based in Hong Kong, and I think over the last 6 years, we've probably done, close to, I'd say, between 1,000 and 1,200 animals, maybe even a bit
Wow.
more.
Yeah.
And we've honestly, how I met him, or how we started to do business, is myself just starting to communicate with him, and telling him, listen, I don't say, go out and bombard people with different messages and stuff, but I think always it's good to touch base and see what the current conditions are. And since 2018, we've done regular shipments yearly, and we've got a good agreement between each other, which works for him and it works for myself as well. So I think, in terms of these international markets, I think, try and, set yourself up with someone which, can help you with the conditions that side, and just probing these different markets, because I think there's going to be a couple of new markets that will open up hopefully soon, internationally, which will have a huge influence in the community again.
hmm It's it's neat and overwhelming for me to think about, from like, okay, there's my local market has, the local metro area here in Minneapolis has, upwards of 3 million people. That's a fertile ground to try and cultivate, so to speak. But then I know that there's places in the world that like you say, we'll go back to using the pied example. That's what got me hooked as well. Like just seeing that animal
100%.
going, how does that exist? How is that even real? I mean, even
It's
in
crazy.
the wonder in the kids' eyes when they walk past the displays and they're like, is it shedding? Is there something wrong with it? I'm like,
Yeah,
no, this is a beautiful, that's what it is. That's how it's going to be, and they're just mesmerized. And I was equally mesmerized. And like, I think of that, there's got to be other markets and other places out there where people literally haven't laid eyes on something like that.
yeah, no, I think, yeah, I think definitely. I mean, if you, like you said, with the pieds and stuff, I think that's why, I mean, pieds are still to the date my favorite animal. I've got a medium white pied female. I don't even breed with her anymore. She's literally just her and Bruce Wayne, which is my pastel Batman male, which is also like a foundational animal. They both retired. They are just chilling in the facility, and I'm actually busy working on enclosure setups for them.
Mm-hmm.
just to view them a bit more.
Right.
But yeah, I think going forward, I think especially if you want to further yourself in terms of breeding and stuff, I think it's good to have some sort of exporting channel wherever you are in the world. In a sense, I think that is going to come down to be really important in terms of because something which can be in high demand in the US market can be maybe not even sought after in the South African market.
Right. Or
So
vice
I think
versa. I mean,
exactly.
there's the pet levels, the breeder levels, the ultra premium tier breeder levels. There's all these different, and levels isn't even the right way to put it because it makes it sound like some are better or worse than there's all those avenues, and all of them can be profitable.
100%. So I think especially for somebody that's starting out and say, listen, I want to build more of an international presence. Is I'll just say is put yourself out there. I always say some people always tell me, but listen, I don't have enough animals like yourself to post regularly, once a day or once a week or once a month even or whatever. I always say even if it's regular updates on the animal itself,
Right.
and and you just go on to, for instance, your page, my page. There's so many. I mean, just for instance, going on your sponsorships pages and just commenting on posts, interacting with people, because that's the only way that people say, oh, listen, okay, this guy commented on my post. Oh, he's from South Africa. Let me see how it's from this side. I think that's the only way is to yeah, to speak to people which is in the same community, because even though we are thousands of miles away from each other, it all comes down to that we are still reptile addicts. I always say this is it's a different ball game. I always tell people, they come to my place and they say, now listen, I just want one animal and this is where you're going to stay. And I say, listen, always, I don't think it's going to stay with one animal. And two
Right.
months later they've already pre-booked 5 or 6 more.
Right.
So
Yep.
I think we're all in the same community enjoying the animals. So I think getting yourself out there, just connecting with like-minded people and touching base there, because what I've seen is the community has also changed a lot in the last 10 years. When I started out as well, um, people weren't sharing information
Right.
honestly, and now I think it's a lot more open. People are a lot more not open-minded, but I think we've come to the realization it's better to work with each other than against each other, because there's still opportunity for everyone in the industry, wherever which situation you are. I think there's always room for growth and opportunity.
I think so too, and I think representing the community in a strong way, in a way that puts us in a bright, responsible light. It's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, we're still so far underground in most places where, like you say, people are terrified of snakes. I was joking with somebody in one of the local zoning offices. I said, "Look, man, I got back to the first page of the Old Testament working
Yeah,
against me in some areas. Like this is
yeah,
there's opportunity here, and yeah, there are challenges, but there are opportunity. What's the short version? Because I know that probably you could probably talk on it for 4 days versus 4 or 5 minutes. But if somebody wants to order from you and they're in the United States, what are the logistics on that? What are some of the things that they have to think about? Because getting a snake could be cost prohibitive, but if a group of people wanted to get a group of snakes, or do you do
yeah.
regular sort of batch shipments that then get distributed? Talk a little bit about that. What does that look like for like say somebody like myself that's interested in one of your snakes? What does that look like?
Yeah, so we work closely with Reptile Hub International, Nicole and Warren Klein. And so basically they help with the distribution of the animals in the US itself. So even now, if you go onto Morph Market, you'll see there's two Reptiles for Century accounts.
Yep.
There's one Reptiles for Centuries locally, and which is local to South Africa, and then one Reptiles for Centuries USA. So it's basically the same animals, the same pricing. You know, for instance, sometimes I'm going to be honest with you, with the currency fluctuations, you know, sometimes the pricing might look a bit different in terms of, but it will be, you know, a few cents or something like that off in terms of, you know, just whatever the currency, you know, rate is or whatever that time. But yeah, for instance, so we try and do at least 2 shipments a year. So what we do is, you know, you can basically it will be the same process of yourself buying an animal locally in the US. The only thing is you're going to wait. It depends on when you're buying the animal. For
When the
instance, if
timing,
you buy,
yeah.
yeah, so for instance, now like the window to ship to the US is also closing down, you know, in terms of, you know, you going into your winter months. So let's say, for instance, so the process will be exactly the same. You guys, let's say you're interested in the US, you will have to basically just cover domestic shipping. We ship to Reptile Hub International. They do the distribution, you know, from wherever they're at to your place. And so in
do
terms,
you build in your South Africa to the Reptile Hub cost? Do you build that into the price of your animals? That's not
yes,
something the buyer's responsible for?
no.
So
So
I mean, that's a really like strong value point. Like my mindset, if I'm looking international, I'm going, man, this is going to cost me a fortune before I even get started. But if you're taking on that cost or building it into the price, that's like I say, that's a huge value point for customers.
yeah, I mean, so shipping, you know, especially to the US, is actually one of my you know, highest cost, you know, in terms of, you know, the amount it physically costs to get the, you know, the package to you guys. You know, a
Right.
box of 20 animals can cost me up to, you know, $2,500, you know,
Yeah.
and, you know, so it really needs to, I always say it really needs to be well worth it. But from our side, you know, we don't mind covering the international shipping as long as, you know, the client is happy with the animal. And you know, another thing is, especially because you guys has got the accessibility to, you know, so many different breeders. You know, if I start, for instance, if I do ask a additional fee for, you know, exporting, most likely I will not have many clients, you know, wanting to purchase the animal. So which I understand as well. You know, I'm not against it or anything like that. And at the end of the day, is, you know, it's to also make the experience easier for the customer. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so Nicole, like I said, Nicole and Warren are great. They do well with receiving the animals, making sure everything is, you know, well in order. We can also provide, you know, NIDO testing, all of these different tests for animals, you know, if the client insists on it. And yeah, in general, you know, I think it's actually quite straightforward. I think sometimes people uh, don't realize that we offer these service in a sense where we, you know, whatever is available on our off market, you'll just pay domestic shipping. And I think it's just sometimes if you know, for instance, like now it's what, 6th of November, or it's actually still 5th of November in
That's
the
right.
US.
Yeah,
But
don't rush us,
um,
by the way. Okay.
yeah, but yeah. So basically, like, I'm not sure. I don't think we'll do another shipment this year, but I can guarantee by March, April next year we'll have another shipment going. So, for instance, if there's an animal now, you know, that you're interested in, you know, we can just discuss it, pay a deposit, and the rest of it will be, you know, actually a week prior to. So we ask 25% as a deposit, and then the rest is payable a week prior to the export taking place.
Hmm. Well, I think it's a good place to wrap up there because I will continue to ask questions endlessly. DJ, I appreciate you being here. We did not even get into really much in the way of your social media strategy and sort of bigger business picture, but we got to have you back sometime. I know it's not particularly convenient with the timing that it
Yeah, for
is,
sure, man.
but
But
I really
perhaps,
enjoyed having you. Go ahead, I cut you off there.
yeah, sorry, man. Yeah, but if you're perhaps if you're doing some shows again in December or something like that, and you're going to do a morning show, it will also be a bit more convenient for myself.
Oh,
then you guys are maybe not going to see me half asleep here, so
well, I
we'll
do
be really
actually. That's a good idea because I do the Tuesday night show every week, but I do a Thursday morning show here in the States, which is it's the same co-host every time. But every now and again, he needs a week off, or I need a week off. Maybe I have you come co-host with me one morning here in the States.
for
That'd
sure.
be a convenient mid-afternoon. I'd be having coffee. You could have a Heineken, and we just all just enjoy hanging out.
Yeah, that sounds good. But thanks again, Adam. I do appreciate you giving me the opportunity. And yeah, I always say, if anyone wants to come to South Africa, really anyone is welcome. I'll open my doors open to everyone. So if you ever want to come through, or you just want to have a travel plan and you want to work it out, you can always just send me an Instagram message.
Well, thank you so much, man. I hope our paths cross again. I know that we're a long way away, but I genuinely enjoyed hanging out with you, and likewise this evening. And I did get your email, and if one of your fellow countrymen, he's also emailed me. We spoke in person about it. Sorry, I haven't gotten back to you. I haven't forgotten, though. It is in the back burner of my mind, and I appreciate the support and the opportunity. If you're watching, you know who you are, so I'll just keep that private between us. But I do want to say thank you to everybody. Guys, go get your Steve Kornacki on. You can watch the returns come in on the election tonight. Keep it cool out there, and I wish everybody the very, very best tonight. DJ, thank you so much. Guys, next week is stick tight too for just a second, DJ, and I'll get you out of here in just a second. Next week, we got Antoine from DPR Cold Blood, and then the following week will be Emily and Ed from Snake Discovery. So always fun. Thursday mornings at 7:30 a.m. Eastern time here in the States for Proper Cup of Joe. Hope to see you somewhere. Cheers, everybody. Take care. Good night, guys. Bye.